Winemaking is a romantic industry. The image it evokes is you working with vines surrounded by scenic landscapes and making a product that requires not just science but a fair degree of vinicultural artistry. The product itself is a celebrated part of modern day life, and knowing its intricacies is often taken as a sign of sophistication and good taste. However, what hides behind this facade of polish and worldliness? Is the economic side of winemaking as elegant and refined as it seems from the outside? In order to make sense of the business of winemaking, we first need to understand how wine is made. Let's start with an imaginary case of a small, privately owned vineyard. Imagine the owner, called Bob, who made his initial money somewhere and now has decided to retire somewhere close to Napa Valley in California and grow and sell his own wine as a passion project. Bob buys a plot of land that he is told is suitable for making excellent red and white wine, and is now ready to launch his new wine brand, the soon-to-be famous Bob's Estate. The first thing Bob would need to do is fit out his new property with equipment for planting, growing, and picking the grapes, crushing, mixing, fermenting, and storing the wine, cellar and tasting room, and general office space. Once all of that is done, Bob plants the vines, but has to wait a few years before the vines can start bearing grapes that are of suitable quality for winemaking purposes. Bob can, of course, hold off on fitting out some of his vineyard until the vines have started bearing quality fruit, but the result in either case is the same: all investment and no money coming in for the first several years of operation. Once the vines have borne suitable quality grapes, Bob is ready to pick and crush them in order to convert the fruit into grape juice, which can be mixed and fermented into the style of wine he prefers. In order to make red wine, Bob would need to ferment his grape juice together with the skins from the grapes, which gives red wine its dark color. White wine production is usually done with the grape skins removed. Fermentation is one of the most critical steps in the overall winemaking process, and the primary actor in this process is yeast. Yeast is a single-cell organism, which is part of the fungi group, and its role in the process is to convert the sugars from the grape juice into alcohol, often in the course of several weeks. Grape juice already has some wild yeast, and some winemakers can rely on this type of yeast alone. However, the results can be unpredictable and vary from year to year, and therefore, additional, commercially available yeast is often added into the fermentation process. Once fermentation is complete, Bob's red wine would most likely need to be pumped into oak barrels for some additional maturing. This process ensures that the wine takes on additional flavors and aromas from the oak, which makes it more complex and able to be sold at a higher price later. All told, the aging process for Bob's red wine can easily take from a few months to several years, further extending the time between the planting of his vines and when his investment can start paying off through the sale of Bob's Estate fine red wines to his customers. To contrast, white wines can often be finished and sold significantly faster. However, producing the wine is only half of the process in establishing a successful winery. The other half lies in distribution and marketing of Bob's finished products. You see, selling wine is by no means easy. Given how much variety exists in the market today, consumers like you and I are spoiled for choice no matter the price segment, be it a $5 bottle for cooking purposes or a $100 bottle to mark a special occasion in style. When it comes to this part of the business, Bob can choose one of a few options. The first is full vertical integration, which means that Bob will bottle and label his wine using his own brand, and then work with distribution partners to get his wine into supermarket shelves, restaurants, and bars, or sell direct to consumers on his own website or through the cellar door at his property. This is a complicated path and requires a strong brand in order to stand out from the crowd and be able to distribute the product widely and sustainably. Another option is to let somebody else worry about all the distribution and marketing, while Bob can simplify his life and focus all of his energy and attention on growing the grapes. Under this model, Bob wouldn't even need to crush or ferment the wine, as he can sell either the grapes or grape juice in bulk to the so-called aggregators. These aggregators would, in turn, resell the grapes or juice to bulk wine producers, or produce cheaper bulk wines themselves from the different types of grapes and juices they buy from smaller grape farmers. All of these options have their own pros and cons and carry different configurations of risk and reward for Bob's new vineyard business. Bulk productions tend to be lower risk, as Bob wouldn't need to worry about whether or not the customers are going to like the wines from his estate, and wouldn't have to build a complicated distribution network for his products. Conversely, a more integrated model can potentially allow Bob to sell his fine wine at a higher price point and earn profits from his operation, but only if he is able to crack the code for producing highly desirable wines at optimal price points for his target customers. This little imaginary example illustrates the way in which the global wine industry has come to be organized over the centuries that it's been around. Much like Bob, winemakers around the world had to figure out their particular sets of strengths, risk tolerance levels, amounts of capital they are ready to invest into the business, and the degree of vertical integration and complexity they were happy to take on. The result is the diverse global wine industry that we have today, which spans the world and can be found in a variety of countries, from the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia. This brings us to an interesting point about the locations in the world that are best suited to producing top quality wines. Traditionally, winemaking regions are split into two worlds, the Old World and the New World. The Old World primarily includes Europe, with France, Italy, Spain, and Germany being the most iconic and oldest industrial wine producing regions on the planet. Many of the wineries active here today have been in operation for centuries and are recognized for both their quality and historical value. The New World is represented by countries like the US, Chile, Australia, and South Africa, to name a few of the most famous ones. Winemaking tradition here started much later than in Europe. However, in the last several decades, these countries have started to make a name for themselves through the quality of their wines, with both the wine critics and regular consumers alike, despite being centuries late to joining the industry. So, what makes a given location preferable for wine production? Well, if you look at the map, you will notice that most of the established wine production regions are concentrated between the 30th and 50th degrees of latitude to the north and south of the equator. This, of course, is not accidental. Generally speaking, anything closer to the equator and it gets too hot for growing quality grapes, while anything north of the 50-degree latitude and it gets too cold. Besides the climate itself, other aspects that matter include things like predictability of rainfall, the length of the growing season, temperature variations between the hottest and coldest months, as well as between the hottest and coldest points of day and night. This last one is called diurnal range, and it is quite an important factor. With a wider diurnal range, warmer temperatures during the day help ripen the grapes and concentrate their flavors, while cooler temperatures at night help preserve the acidity in the grapes, helping create more complex and finely balanced wines in the process. As you see, a variety of factors influence the economics of winemaking. Interestingly, it is often said that if you want to make money, you should avoid going into winemaking altogether. This is because of the complexity of skills and knowledge required to structure the business well in the first place. Leveraging the strengths of your particular plot of land, as well as the climate, soil, and other conditions of your vineyard, while minimizing the influence on the business of your structural weaknesses. However, even if you do have the right skills and knowledge, there is still a variety of factors that are outside of your direct control, which can affect the economics of your vineyard. These factors include variations in weather patterns from year to year, crop infection risks, potential labor shortages at critical points in time, machinery and plant breakdowns, and a variety of others. Experienced winemakers have, of course, developed techniques for controlling these risks, but even they are not always immune to their impact. Despite all these risks, the global wine industry is alive and well today, with industry leaders performing very well both operationally and financially. An example is E&J Gallo, the biggest wine producing company in the world, which was established in 1933 and operates out of its headquarters in Modesto, California. The company is privately owned, employs over 7,000 people worldwide, owns and operates around 20 wineries across the U.S., produces wine and spirits under an impressive 130 brands, and is present in over 100 countries around the globe. Other successful international wine companies include the US-based Constellation Brands and the Wine Group, Australian Treasury Wine Estate and Accolade Wines, Chilean Vina Concha y Toro, French Castel Ferret and Pinot Ricard, and Argentinian group Grupo Pinaflor and Fecovita. A common theme across all these giants of the wine industry is diversification, with each company spreading its risks across a variety of wineries, brands, locations, grape types, and price points. This allows them all to survive the inevitable ups and downs of the wine business from year to year. So in the end, let's circle back to where we started this video. If you are like our imaginary friend Bob, should you invest your time and capital into starting a winery? Is the business side of winemaking as glamorous and worldly as it looks from the outside? The answer to these questions is it depends. It depends on how much capital you have to spare, what would happen if you lost it because of a few bad crops, whether you have the patience to wait several years before you see the fruits of your labor, and how much complexity you want to have in both your business and personal life. Our guess is that for most people, there are better ways to spend your time and money, and with much better risk-reward profiles at that. But for a select few, it would not be about the risk or the money. Those are the people who find joy in overcoming the hardships of farming and tending their vineyards, and making a product as refined and sophisticated as wine. And they are exactly the people who will keep the industry going for decades more into the future.